Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I just want to say welcome, CMI family. We are so grateful for each and every one of you guys. And you know what? One of my favorite things about these monthly gatherings is that every time we come together, we're just reminded that none of us are doing this work alone. And that is such a good feeling to know. And many of you I know have recently hosted roundtable events in your communities. And so you've been gathering pastors and leaders and organizations, and you've shared around a shared vision for stronger marriages and healthier families. And we know that those moments are powerful, but we all know that the real question begins after the event ends. How do we keep the momentum going, and how do we keep people engaged? And that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today. And before we jump in, I would love for everyone to post in the chat, what is one win or one challenge that you've experienced after your roundtable event? Maybe it's a new partnership that formed, a leader who stepped up, or maybe you're trying to figure out how to keep people engaged. Just go ahead and drop those into the chat. And I do want to give you a quick reminder before we begin that today's session is being recorded. And I'm going to send out a follow-up email next week, and then it'll have the recording link and Carl's slide deck and any other resources that are shared during today's training. And we're also going to have a time at the end for Q&A. And so if you have questions that come to mind or things that you want to share that come to mind, just feel free to jot those down, and we'll do that at the close of the call. We always want to start with prayer, and I would love to introduce someone who is such an important part of our CMI family, Dave Jackson from Friends of the Family in Lynn Benton, Oregon. And Dave, he leads an incredible team that they are faithfully impacting marriages and families in the community there in Lynn Benton. And he constantly, this is something about Dave, he constantly models what collaborative community leadership looks like. And so we are just blessed to have Dave with us, and especially grateful that he's going to be opening us in prayer today. So Dave, thank you for being here.
Would you bow with me? Gracious Heavenly Father, what a joy to gather together with these brothers and sisters. We welcome you here in our presence as we bow before you. We love you, Lord. This is a group who worships you, who trusts you, who are called according to your purposes. Lord Jesus, as we gather together today to keep encouraging and learning from each other, would you, Holy Spirit, teach us, encourage us, empower us, equip us, direct us as we seek to walk out what you've called us to do in each of our communities and ministering to marriages and families and stirring a movement where more and more people lean into this cause with us. So Lord, as we continue this time today, please bless Carl and all the interactions here. Thank you so much for Carl and Dennis and staff and their leadership of the CMI movement. Lord, have your way in and through us, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much, Dave, for praying. We really appreciate you. Well, all right. Today's conversation, it really feels especially meaningful because we're going to get to hear from somebody who didn't just join this movement, but really started it. And so I'm honored to introduce Carl Caton. As you know, he's the president and founder of Marriage Initiative. And most of you know, because you've spent quite a bit of time with Carl, and you know that he has spent years championing the vision that communities are strengthened when marriages are strengthened, and that the lasting change happens when leaders come together around that shared mission. And that's something that he is always talking about. And so much of what we call the CMI family today exists because Carl believed that people own what they help to create. And if there's anyone who understands how to move people from a one-time event into lasting community engagement, it's Carl. And so today, Carl has pre-recorded his teaching portion of this training so that we can ensure that everybody has the best possible experience. But he is joining us live, and he will be there afterwards to answer Q&A and to just for discussion time. So Carl, we are grateful for your leadership, and we're excited to get to hear from you today. So Sam, would you play his recording?
Well, hello, friends. It's great to be with you today. I'm so excited to talk to you about our roundtable events and how we create sustainability after we come together in the community. Well, when we think about our work as community marriage initiatives, we're really more of a movement than we are certainly an institution, or we're certainly more of a movement than a program. And I love to say that our work in the CMI world is to mobilize people around the shared purpose of strengthening marriages. And despite the fact that movements often feel kind of fuzzy and organic, there is actually a structural process for how movements work well. And I want to talk about that structural process so that we can talk about how to make the middle part of that process more sustainable. So, leading a marriage movement really has three steps that are involved: to discover, to connect, and to activate. To discover is to find everyone and everything that God might use in your community to strengthen marriages and to redeem and restore what has been lost. It's a powerful process of finding the people, ideas, and resources that God has given you. Then, after we've done a discovery process, then we connect, and that's through our roundtable events, coming together to understand how better we can co-create a better future together. Connect gatherings are where we envision collectively what's possible for the way forward and come up with ideas that we can activate, which is our third step. Activate is to take the ideas that come out of our roundtable events and put them into motion. And I'm going to unpack this whole process because the key to sustainability in our connect gatherings is to understand and to engage in the full range of the process over discover, connect, and activate. So again, what makes our connect gathering sustainable? It's thinking of the full range of process. So movements are not so much about creating something new as they are about revealing what is already in place. And really, this points to the fact that God is always moving. He has gone before us. This problem that we're facing in our communities around our marriages and families, it's not new to God. It's not something new on His radar. He is already moving deeply in your community. So movements are about revealing what is already in place. Whereas Rich Harwood says, that the answers are already in your community. You just need to find them, and that's key to the discovery process. But I want to take it even to the next level. It's not just that discovery is about finding the right people, because discovery is more than just finding the right people. In fact, a healthy discovery process is where God reveals the playbook for the way forward. How does God want us to move forward in leading our marriage movement in our community? That's ultimately what we find in a healthy discovery process. Now, once we've gone through a healthy discovery process, which by the way is ongoing and never stops, discovery never stops in our community. But after we've met with enough people to understand really what God is doing in the moment, that's when we connect. That's when we come together in order to define the problems that are collectively ours and to co create a better future together. It's a process of co creation where you facilitate these people sitting down in a room together to talk about what is the problems that are collectively ours and to discover ways to move forward together. And so in our Connect gatherings, in these roundtable events, the role of a movement leader in the Connect phase is to facilitate a process where your people co-create a better future together. Your role is that role of a facilitator. And your job is to bring people together for that purpose. And so the question is, as Scott Beck often says, is how do you help happen what wants to happen in your community? That's ultimately what you're trying to find in your Connect gatherings. And so we've said that the first two steps of this are to discover and to connect. And ultimately, our outcome is that we want to activate. We want to activate a process of integration with the recruitment and the coordination of the broadest number of people possible towards the systematic solution of a specific and yet complex problem. That's a very wordy way to say something that I can say much more simply, which is activate is where we get things done together. And activate is what always follows a healthy discover and connect process, or ultimately what follows your roundtable event is that you've come together to explore a problem and activate is what follows. And so now I want to talk about these three steps in our process from kind of what's the lens of what's the essential skill that you bring as a movement leader to each step in the process. Well, discovery is typically engages your more relational skills. It's about meeting with people and getting to know them and hearing their story and encouraging them and deeply understanding the problems that they face and the excitement that they have for the projects that are before them. To connect really engages your skill for facilitation. In your connect gatherings or your roundtable events, you are not the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is found in the abundance of the people. And you're facilitating a process where people discover the answers for the way forward. And then the essential skill for Activate is more of a project management skill because in your roundtable events, people have defined the problems we need to work on together. And so working on those problems essentially requires project management skills. So that's kind of the three different steps of the process and the unique skill that you need to bring to each of them. So let's go back to discover. I want to go back through this whole process again. So ultimately, discovery is understanding how is God moving? What is he doing? Who are the people he's brought to you and how is he working? How has he gone before you to redeem and restore marriages? And ultimately, what are the needs that people have? What are the challenges that they're facing, and what are the needs that they collectively have? And then where are the strengths? The strengths are what meet those needs. And I like to say that everyone's need is met by the strength of another. So your job is not ultimately to be the solution, but it's your job is to help people find the solution to the collective problems that they face. And so I want to camp out for a minute talking about needs and strengths. And I've used this series of 5 questions with over 1,000 people. And I want you to hear me talk about the needs and strengths as I go through these questions. So my question number 1 is always, so tell me what's going on. I hear great things about you and tell me about your work serving marriages. You're talking about marriage in these opportunities to have coffee with people. And then after you've heard people talk very generally and very broadly about what they're working on, you want to get more specific and you want to move them towards a chronological journey of communicating that. And so I often say, how does this connect to your personal story? It makes it very personal for them. The third question is when we're really starting to identify the needs and the opportunities. Third question is, what's the one thing you're most excited about going forward? You're really looking for the motivations. What's the fire in their belly? What excites them? What gets them up in the morning to work on this project? These are the opportunities that exist in your community, and these opportunities often are in the minds of the people that God's called to this project. Question number 4 talks about more more specifically on the needs. What's in the way of that? What's the roadblock you face? And number 5 is how can I help you take the next step? So these 5 questions really reveal what are the needs and strengths that the people in your community have. And again, how can the needs of everyone be met by the strengths of another? And before we move off from this, I always like to use this quote from David Augsburger. He says that being heard is so close to being loved that most people cannot tell the difference. So show me a person who asks questions and listens, and I'll show you a person who makes people feel known and loved. Now, I want to just give you a little bit more depth of understanding of how we identify strengths and needs. This is a different cohort that we lead among people in the marriage movement, and our team member uses the Discover, Connect, Activate process, and through discovery, they have found these are the top areas of need that the people in this cohort have. They have a need to understand and embrace, and not just embrace, but to speak to the cultural challenges that we face. And they all have needs around funding. That sounds familiar to us, right? They have marketing needs. How do they get the word out? And they have staffing needs. Those are the 4 top needs that people in this cohort have. Well, while we're listening, we're also identifying who has the strengths to meet these needs. And the people who have these strengths are the people ultimately you're going to invite to speak at your roundtable events, at your connect gatherings. So I share this just to show that there's a fundamental process that we work in activating a movement. So the connect process is, again, where we facilitate a process where brilliant people can learn from one another and ultimately imagine a new way forward together. As I've said before, we use a moderated panel format. We typically have one person, one of our team members as facilitator, and we typically have three speakers, three panelists. Very often for our local roundtable events, we'll use maybe a church staff member, somebody who's on staff at a church, maybe a volunteer lay couple who comes at this from serving in a marriage ministry, and maybe a mental health professional that brings that kind of that professional angle. And you want to bring these different perspectives because people come to your roundtable event for different reasons, and what brings them back is meeting the needs that they are uniquely facing. And so, why do people come to roundtable events? We've polled people over the years. We had over 100 roundtable events in San Antonio, and these are the four top reasons that they share with us. Number one, they come to be encouraged. It's encouraging just to be in the room with other people who are on the same journey with you, who have the same challenges and have the same needs that you have. It's encouraging to be in the room with others that are like-minded. Secondly, to be equipped to share best practices, to learn how to do your work better, to practice your craft. People always come to find new resources, and ultimately, we hope they go away having connected. And you may have remembered me sharing before one of the most effective connect events we ever had was when we bought $5 Starbucks cards for everyone in the room and gave them out and said, before you leave the room today, find someone to have coffee with. Those are just some things that we've learned that makes our Connect gatherings effective and keeps people engaged and coming back. So I'm going to roll through a few pictures here just to kind of give you an idea what this looks like for us. This is a very old picture. We've been meeting in this same location for 17 years. But this is kind of what it looks like from the outside. This is our moderated panel format. Here's me in a much younger picture. And I'll share with you on this day, the gentleman in the vest, it was Sean Stover. He's an author and speaker and a really brilliant guy. He had just written a book called 5 Days to a New Marriage. And the couple sitting beside him was a volunteer couple that was excited about implementing this in the community. And after this roundtable, we've had probably dozens of churches and events that have featured this particular resource. So the activate portion was to take what you've learned today and to put it into motion. Now, we don't always put a lot of people in a room. This is a Connect gathering or a roundtable event we did just around a boardroom table. This was a much smaller event that focused on the needs of counselors and mental health professionals. And we were talking about the challenges that they uniquely face, which are often different. Our counselors told us that they need exposure. They want to grow their practice. They need connections with others. They want to learn with others. One of the most exciting things that came away from this was that there were people that wanted to specialize in one particular aspect of counseling, and they were looking for people to trade off with. In other words, they wanted to collaborate better, where one counselor worked in a specialty area and another counselor worked in a separate specialty area, but they referred clients back and forth based on the various needs that existed. That was an activate follow-up that came out of this Connect gathering, this roundtable event. Of course, one of the things that always happens at a roundtable event is people have a lot of fun. You know this, when you've hosted roundtable events, there's an energy in the room. People love coming together. It creates a sense of excitement, and that level of excitement alone is what creates sustainability in moving forward and keeping people engaged in the process. So I want to add something new that relates to this idea of how do we create sustainability in our roundtable events. And this is something that we're implementing in San Antonio that I hope will be helpful. Number one is that we're learning after many, many events that there's two opportunities that come to us at our roundtable events. Is that typically we'll meet new people, which in terms means we have invitation for new relationships. And there's always ideas for new opportunities. In other words, people that come to our roundtable events, they always have ideas for how we can solve the problems that we've talked about together. So we want to be really intentional on documenting the people that have come and follow up with these new invitations for relationships and new ideas for opportunities. And specifically, one of the things that we're implementing in San Antonio is what we call our top 10 in 10. What does that mean? It means that we'll do a debrief after our event and identify who are the top 10 people who attended that day that we must follow up with. And within 10 days of the event, we want to make sure that we have them on the books in some way or another. In other words, we're not going to meet with him in the first 10 days, but at least within 10 days, we want to have these 10 meetings scheduled. So it's our new top 10 and 10 idea of making sure we follow up well and that we create sustainability. Now, remember, we talked about every roundtable event brings us new relationships. And through those new relationships, we go back into our process again, go back to discovery, to meet with them for coffee and to understand what are the challenges that they're facing, what are the strengths that they bring to this movement. It's a chance for us to reignite the discovery process with new people. But for the new opportunities, now that's moving forward in our process to activate and to how do we take these new ideas that emerge, these new opportunities that are brought to us, and begin to act on them. For instance, uh, yeah, we recently had folks from a new church attend, and they said they would like to host a date night event, and that gave us an opportunity to activate on how to bring a new speaker to San Antonio, and we're already putting that on the books as of today. So a lot of neat opportunities to activate. And I just want to share this is a list of other opportunities we've had to activate. The first item was newsletters, websites, and social media images. And in other words, how do we get the word out on churches were coming to us saying the problem they faced was they brought in a good speaker and they put a lot of energy in creating an excellent event, but not enough people showed up. And so one of the Activate outcomes was how can we do a better job of creating newsletters and websites and social media images to help get the word out on all these churches that are doing good things in our community. It's exciting that after having done this for 17 years now, we every year have over 200 events in our city every year where people can find help and hope for marriage. This is just an exciting way that we were able to activate a project that helped make these events successful. So as I'm closing here, I just wanted to share that Stephanie and Addison have done an amazing job putting together a PDF document that carries some of these items that I shared with you today. It's called Facilitating Community Collaboration. It's a beautiful document filled full of great ideas that you can use just to kind of refresh on how to keep the sustainability of your roundtable events moving forward. But when I finish today, I just want to share this about this entire process, which is what I believe, which is that every community carries a quiet brilliance waiting to be seen. And so when we discover, we listen for the whispers of what God has already begun. How is God already moving? And who is he going to use? And how will he do this work? And then when we connect, those whispers rise into a sense of shared purpose. We find a collective purpose in how we can move forward together. And then ultimately, when we activate, that sense of shared purpose becomes a movement with people stepping forward, offering their strength and weaving a future that none of us can create alone. As we always say, we believe God desires to redeem and restore marriages in our community by his power and for his glory. And our job as community marriage initiative leaders is to understand what is God doing. And this process of discover, connect, activate gives us clear and concrete steps on how we can be really tuned in on what the Lord is doing around us. So I'm excited to share this with you today, and I look forward to our Q&A, and we'll get started with that real soon.
There's so much wisdom in what you shared with us today. And I think one of the biggest takeaways is that momentum doesn't sustain itself. It's not an accidental thing. It grows intentionally, and I think that we put a lot of thought behind that. And that's one of the beautiful things about the CMI family is everybody's need is met by the strength of another. And so as we move into our Q&A segment, there is so much wisdom and experience represented in this group. We don't think that we have all the answers, and so we want to hear from you as well. So we're going to open up for Q&A, and if you have a question for Carl, or if you'd like to share something that has helped sustain momentum in your community, we would also love to hear that as well. So I think Dennis has his hand raised first.
Yeah, Carl, this is directed to you. I've got a question and then a comment. So my question, Carl, you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Carl, my question is, how did you get to be so smart? I mean,
I'm from Big Spring. That's not really a thing.
I mean that was brilliant, guys. That was brilliant. I mean, guys, I found myself listening and I started to take notes and I said, no, I don't want notes on this. I need the handout. I need to go through it again and I need the transcript. So I want to read it and with the handout. And then guys, I hope you guys get that was so much collected wisdom in, I don't know, what, a minute and a half? I mean, seriously, what, 20 minutes? I mean, guys, will you, the rest of you guys, please join me in giving Mr. Carl Caton a standing ovation for that? Come on, stand up, standing ovation. No, Carl, honestly, seriously, well done, my friend. Well done. That's my only question.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions or comments or anything they'd like to share in the room today? Bruce and Lita Wilbanks from Tulsa.
Well, I just wanted to say that we have made a connection with Heather Carty and her husband, Carl. They live in Franklin, Tennessee, and actually Heather is on the Zoom call today. They live in Franklin, Tennessee, and they were speakers at the Weekend to Remember here in Tulsa, and they're interested in finding out more about CMI and if it's a possibility for them to be able to do something in their city.
Awesome. That's great. Yes, we'd love to get in contact with them. You can give them my contact information. I'd love to chat with them.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Amy Guilford.
Started doing it.
Hello, everybody, and thank you as always, Carl. When we were reviewing the agenda for today and saw that you were speaking, my dad, Bill McKenna, had to get home to hear Carl. So this was not a CMI meeting in his mind. This was a Carl meeting. And as always, it's, the content that you share is worth its weight in gold. The discovery process that you outlined earlier, kind of similar to the humble inquiry language that you have also always used. One of the things that sometimes we get bogged down a little bit in, and maybe it's just a reminder on how to shape those discovery conversations. When we ask what's one thing that a pastor or ministry leader is really excited about in getting to know them, how often have you encountered that it's marriage related or versus something else in the church, even like building a new children's playground, which is not necessarily connected to the work that we're trying to do? How have you navigated some of those conversations so that you can build relationships, but eventually circle back to marriage? How have you navigated some of those?
That's a great question, Amy. And so, yes, I do in the listening process, I do keep it focused almost specifically on marriage. I try not to get off track, and people are generally coming to this. They're real excited about marriage. Marriage tends to be maybe new to them, and they stay focused on the marriage conversation. So that's a great question. I don't get off in the weeds on other elements of their ministry. we definitely try to stay focused. Now, of course, there's times when people have personal things going on in their life, and we just kind of want to hit the pause on anything related to ministry and just hear what's happening in that personal situation. But generally speaking, that I'll always keep the conversation very, very, very centered on marriage and serving marriages. So great question.
Great. Thank you for that.
And the other thing is that, just because of the time limitation, I didn't add this in there, but one question I always ask, before we leave is, who else should I be talking to? Can you give me at least 2 names of other people? And that's how I got to over 1,000 people, is because everyone just kept leading me to someone else and someone else. And so, yeah, it's important because people know people.
I think, Bill, you had your hand raised next, and then we'll go to Mike.
Yeah, it's an age-old thing. Where does one start? You start at the beginning. I know that's a crazy thing, but what's the beginning depends on what you're trying to do, what your objective is, whether you're beginning a ministry program, whether you're beginning a sports program, what it is, you decide is what is it that you want to do? And then you start maybe with prayer. Pray about that, number one. Number two, get around people who have the wisdom and the knowledge, who have started programs like you want to do. And maybe based on that, come up with one idea that you're going to begin your particular program with.
Great. Thank you for that, Bill. All
Yeah,
right,
great thoughts.
Mike.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. So I've been meeting with a group in Douglas and realized that this is really small. There's only 5,000 people here. So uh, the group seems to kind of taken off and they have their own ideas of what they want to do, which I was very encouraged about. The 5 pastors want to get together and all preach on marriages at the same time and try and use some of the same language so that the community hears the same thing, which I think is wonderful. Um, I just, so am I headed in the right direction? Is that kind
Mm-hmm.
of something similar to what you're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about?
Absolutely. And that does happen a lot, Mike, is that, people come to us and there's already some energy happening. And gosh, where there is energy already moving, we just want to pour fuel on that fire. We've had a number of things. We've had like groups of pastors, decide they wanted to do like a marriage mentor training, and they'd already done a lot of the pre-work. And then, so it didn't start with us. We just poured more fuel on the fire. And we said, yeah, absolutely. And can we invite others to be a part of what you're doing? And can we advertise it for you? What can we do to help you be successful in that? So yeah, when there's some energy that's already begun, wow, we love that, and just encourage it to keep moving.
So then do I take, I feel like I can do the relationship and the facilitation okay, but I am not very good at project management at all. So it's just me. How do I do that? And then the other question was, well, answer that one first and I'll get to the next one. If there's, what do I do about that?
So yeah, recruit some folks into that process. We had, one of the things that came out of a Connect gathering that we wanted to help activate was our counselors wanted to put up a special kind of a special web page for a group of counselors, and we didn't have the ability to do that, but we encouraged them. Actually, we provided a little bit of funding, so they were able to get that done. We just kind of like, what is it we can add to this? So it may not be our own skill, like you say, Mike. It may be something else that we can add to it, but definitely want to support it.
Then one quick question more, last one. You said you always try and provide a teaching aspect when they get together. Is that when they don't already have a movement of their own going, or do I need to always try and have some type of, or what I heard you say was to always have some type of teaching aspect when they meet together?
Are you talking about for the Connect gatherings?
Yep.
Yeah. So in our Connect gatherings, this is a great question. We don't we're not the featured speaker ever. We're always a facilitator of others. So preparing for those connect events, remember, we're focused on needs and strengths. We identify what's the most prominent need that we see expressed in the community. And then where's the strength? In other words, who could speak to this? Who's already solved this problem that can share their wisdom? And then so we cultivate those folks through we call it content curation. So it's a curation process. So I mentioned that I have usually three panelists, and our process is 10 to 1. And what I mean by that is if a panelist is going to speak for 15 minutes on a best practice, that's a solution or a strength, I'm going to sit with them for 10 times that amount of time. I'm going to prep them for 150 minutes. In other words, I'll sit down with them for an hour and have them talk through what they've learned about this area of strength and what are the golden nuggets. Stephanie and I are always talking about. We're always looking for the golden nuggets. What's something that they could really hand off that would be of great value, and then so we give them feedback, by saying, what I heard you say about this was really good, and I think if you share this and here's why this could be really helpful. And so we really do prepare our panelists really, really well. We're trying to create value. Sustainability, when Steph first mentioned this idea of sustainability, what keeps the energy going, it's giving people such a high degree of excellence, giving them so much value they'll want to come back. That's how we've done over 100 of these, and is that we just continue to provide value. And when they come together, it's a big commitment. Our last one, Stephanie, I don't remember exactly. It seemed like we had 70 or 80 people in the room for our January roundtable event. I mean, collectively, that's a lot of time people are committing. By the time they finish work and drive and attend the meeting and get back to work, it's a 3-hour chunk out of their day. And so we really want to deliver excellence, and that excellence creates that sustained momentum that carries on.
All right. Thank you for your questions, Mike. And up next, we have Kim Kwame from Washington.
Hey there.
Hi, Kim. It's so great to see you.
It's great to see
love
you.
seeing you folks. Yeah, good to see you again.
My question is logistics. So with the follow-up with the roundtable, gathering, which way do you connect the contacts for follow-ups? Do you have a creative way in which you do that besides like just signing a piece of paper or registration? What's a way that you do that that kind of would be sure that you captured everybody that comes?
Yeah, so we use a pretty high quality sign up page that ends up, I believe it falls into a spreadsheet that we have from the event. Stephanie, can you answer this question better? Because I'm not familiar. The team does so much work behind the scenes. I'm not really sure how we capture it.
Yeah, right now we do all of our registrations through Jot forms, and then that is connected to a spreadsheet. Like Carl was saying, it's a Google sheet that has all the data in it, and so that's what we're doing with it right now for our registrations. Is that what you're asking, Kim?
Yeah, I attended a recent like fundraiser too, in which, a way that they did it once they were at the event was like saying like, would anybody like to sign up for prayer or volunteer for this certain thing?
Mhm.
Or because that was a way in which they, also made sure they connected with people on a lesser of a commitment, right? If they had not fully gotten their information and registration. So I was just curious about that, but thank
Yeah.
you both.
We do registration through Jotform when we're doing the online stuff. And then we have a printout of those names and the list of people. So when they come, we have our registration tables set up with all of our swag there that they can take some free stuff if they want. And then their name will get checked off the list. So then we know exactly who was there so we can follow up.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, like a CRM, customer relationship management software or app it can be really, really helpful. We've used those before. One of the things I'd like to share just briefly is we were struggling with our no-show rate. And Stephanie, can you remind me what was, was it around 20% no show that we were having? And well, and then share with everyone how we shifted to the reminder with reminding them about their lunch order. This was a really cool little innovation. Stephanie, share about the lunch order nuance and how that got more people to the event.
Yeah, so we were having a lot, like, a pretty good no-show rate, and, when you paid for lunches and all of that. And so what we did is start simply sending out a reminder to them, and in a nice way, making it very clear that their lunch was going to be purchased, and if they needed to cancel, if they canceled now, then we'll, be able to cancel their lunch. And that helped us out a lot. We really had a lot of people that realized, okay, I don't want to be costing them money. So if I'm not going to come, then I'm going to go ahead and let them know right now that I'm canceling my reservation, and then, or so then we were able to have a lot lower no-show rate with doing that. It was kind of
And that, yeah, and it's kind of funny. Speaking of people own what they help to create, one of the funny little dynamics is that when we let people select their lunch, then when they find out that we've ordered the Santa Fe salad for them, and they're more likely to show up because it shows intentionality. We've been working hard, behind the scenes to make this a really special time for them. So, if you don't show up, you'll miss out on your Santa Fe salad, and we don't want you to do that. So it's funny how, and it really, I would say, seems like, Stephanie, we dropped our no-show rate at least recently, maybe 5%, or it
yeah,
dropped dramatically. It's been really helpful.
yeah, yeah, yep.
That's so good to know.
And we can, if anyone wants an example of how we communicated that, we can get that to you too. Just a nice little example of how we communicated that. All right, Rebecca from Virginia.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks so much, Carl. Yes, I wanted to make sure I was here too. I love hearing from Stephanie and everybody else, but Carl, you just take it to the next level. So two quick questions. One was the chart that you showed on what the needs were. Was that an email that you sent out? Was that a poll that you did, or was this in conversation with each other?
That was in conversation. Yeah. So those were in-person conversations where we just simply listened and wrote those things down, and it becomes abundantly clear what people need the most. You want to deliver what it is that they need, and so yeah, that was all just personal input.
Okay. And then question two, kind of a follow-up, I think, on what Kim was asking as well, or just kind of the next step there is, how do you all have a way to connect people at the event to each other? Like, how do you facilitate that? Is there a, besides them passing business cards or just sharing cell phone numbers right there at the event? If somebody were to come to you and say, "Hey, I didn't get a chance to talk to Joe. Can you
Mhm.
can you give me his information or something like that?" Do you all have any type of disclaimers or anything that says, hey, we're going to do this?
That's another great question. So we do have a disclaimer, not around that, but our disclaimer is that we're taking pictures for social media. That's really important. I'm glad you brought that up. At your roundtable events, if you're going to post pictures on social media, you need to have permission. And people don't sign a permission slip, but we have a notice at the registration table that pictures will be used on social media. And so we don't publish lists of people who attended, but people always know that we'll make connections, and we often do that. So yeah, that's for sure. And then how do you make that happen? What we find, and I think I'd be really interested in what the rest of you hear. People stick around. We've been. I remember many times when I'd look around the room, the event had been finished for an hour and half the people were still there. So I think it's really important to have a room where people don't have to hustle out, and get off the premises, but where you have, some space where they can stand. And that's part of the venue selection process that I think is really important. If you're like in a restaurant or something like that where there's not like a lot of meeting place, but this is a venue that has a big open space outside the meeting rooms that where people kind of can spill out. That's really key and really important to the process is enough room where if the tables have to be taken down for the next event, at least people have a place to just to hang out and get to know each other.
Yeah, we did a meet and greet before our last roundtable, and it was
Mm-hmm.
outside and all that kind of stuff, and people really appreciated that. So I think that,
Mm-hmm.
and then they stayed afterwards too. So that was a blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the feedback we often get is that people want more time just to make those connections. And then, but again, people come from a whole different, range of reasons. And so we try to accommodate most of those as best we can. I want to share another thing, maybe before we get to the next question, is like how you get people there. There's a writing genre called persuasive copywriting, and there's a framework for how you write copy for your promotional material for the event, persuasive copywriting, and then we divide up. So we invite people through social media, through our newsletters, through all the different forms that you can always remember. But then we'll usually take a spreadsheet with 100 names, usually from the last event, and we divide it up among the team. Generally, everybody finds 10 people that they'll personally invite. We have found that personal invitations are vitally important. And if we don't do that, then our attendance is much lower. We really want people in the room because it is people in the room that makes things happen across the city. And then people often ask, well, what are the steps to get people there? And I say, well, we go through 6 steps. The 6 steps are invite, remind. Those are the 6 steps of how we get people to show up.
All right. It looks like Bruce and Lita.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. That's so true. The personal invitations really get a lot more people there, we found. But what the question I had, well, let me back up to the other question that was asked a second ago by Rebecca. What we do, we have ours at a restaurant, but has a large meeting room. But we've tried it different ways. We've had long tables where everybody sat at them, but we broke it up into just 4-person tables, 4 to 6, and try to encourage them to sit with somebody they haven't sat with before to get to know somebody new. And so that kind of promotes the conversation and the connecting and networking. But Carl, what you're saying about getting people there, we found that we have a lot of regulars that come very often, usually even to all of them. But is there a good way to encourage them to bring new people with them next time? What are some phraseology or just I mean, we've talked about it, we mention it, but we don't get a lot of that.
That's a great question. Wow. And it's something I now that I think we've kind of forgotten about in San Antonio. We used to, when we finished an event, we would pause and say, who should be here that's not in the room?
Ooh, I like that.
And just give people 10 or 15 seconds to think about that. And then just say, hey, would you remind them, goodness, Bruce, I've completely forgotten about that. But that was a really important thing. Stephanie, we need to remind our team, I need to remember that we need to do that. Like, who should be here that's not in the room? And would you invite them?
I like that.
Yeah, that's really good. I do have one other question too. Carl, you said your last was in January. How many of these roundtables do you normally have in a year?
Yeah, so now we have roughly 2 or 3 a year, but we're scaling it back up again. And I'll share with you, Chad and Erica Shapiro, who are on this call today, they're serving in San Antonio now. Amazing leaders and couple. Chad and Erica, we're so thrilled to have you on this team. They just hosted a really fun women in ministry event. And Erica facilitated that. We had not hosted a specific focus on women in ministry. And but as you know, it's pastors' wives. It's women who are very tuned in to the where relationships are that are highly overlooked in this whole process. So that was a really fun event. So this year, I think we're going to do 3 or 4 roundtables. We started out in the very, very beginning. We were doing one a month, or usually about 10 a year, and they were smaller. They were less formal. They were easier to organize. And then for years, we did 4 per year. Plus, it was 4 per year plus specialty events that we did. So we did all the, a number of like specialty events. And then we had another thing we did for many years, about 10 times a year, was what we call our marriage ministry experts. Yeah, that was that smaller table. Again, easier to facilitate, easier to convene. And they wanted to talk shop. They wanted there was nobody convening them. And they loved getting to know each other. They wanted to talk shop. So, we did that a lot. We also did an evening roundtable event for volunteers, for lay couples, for quite some time. That was kind of a neat twist. A lot of volunteer couples couldn't come for the lunch event, so we did evening events for these volunteers. But then, we kept scaling up the quality and size of our events so large that for the last few years, we only done 2 a year generally.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Dennis, it looks like you have your hand raised, and then Bill, I see you. We'll go with you next, Bill.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One just is kind of a disclaimer. Well, actually, I want to follow what you said. Carl, you said, I think I heard you say that you were doing your marriage ministry experts. At one point, did you say you were doing those about 10 times a year? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. Yeah, we were doing them once a month, but we didn't do them at Christmas. We didn't do it in January. So yeah, about 10 times a year.
And that was in addition to the quarterly roundtables. So
Right,
interesting.
right.
Okay. So one kind of caveat that I just want to kind of speak for the group. The San Antonio has 2 million people in it. I mean, it's a big community. And so it has lots of people, lots of resources that are already doing marriage stuff. Now, I'm in Bay County now, which is 200,000 people. And let me tell you, there aren't nearly as many people already doing stuff. And so I say that so if you're sitting here listening and you're hearing the number of frequency that they're talking about here, you've got to take your own market into consideration and say, okay, what's reasonable, and then your own bandwidth in it. And what I'm trying to protect against is people getting discouraged to say, oh, well, we can't do that, so we're just going to wait. No, instead of worrying about what you can't do, focus on what can you do and add value to the community as that. And then the second point, Steph, is that I kind of blocked the answer to Calvin's question earlier. And since we are about 5 minutes before the end, I'm just wondering if we could kind of redirect to make sure that we don't leave anybody out. Would that be okay?
Okay. If someone is new and they're new at Marriage Initiative and they, for example, I'm in Austin and like, okay, I don't even know who's doing what already. It's like, how do you start?
Well, let's talk after the meeting, because I think we do have some other things we can add to this because of some previous activity that was going on there. But I would just make a commitment to have coffee with 2 people a week. And I'll tell you, this is a great source. If you'll go online on Prepare Enrich and search facilitators, gosh, there's 100,000 Prepare Enrich facilitators across the country. We in San Antonio, we have, I think, between 75 and 100. So even if you were, as Dennis mentioned, in a much smaller town, you still have 6 or 8 or 10 even in a small town. Prepare Enrich facilitators are people that have gone beyond just being average and have gone the extra mile. They're people that are really interested in marriage. Do a little research on who's doing re-engage groups in your city, or if there's any other, and then just invite these people out to coffee, and then then just focus on what are the needs, what are the strengths. And Calvin, there's a great question that I ask to people a lot of times. Let's say somebody will say, well, my wife and I care deeply about marriages, and we hosted an event at our church, and not many people showed up, and we were really discouraged, and we kind of gave up on that. And I would ask a question like, well, let me ask you this: if I was able to bring somebody that could answer that question for you, someone who's done a really amazing job at that and has learned a lot, would you be willing to come? The answer to that is 100% yes. Uh, and just start building this queue or this roster of people that have committed to come, and then remind them. I always reach out to them and remind them and say, hey, Calvin, we talked, a month or so ago, and you indicated you'd like to come to a roundtable event, and just wanted to invite you in person and let you know this is going to happen on a certain date and time. Those signups are like almost 100%. So that's the way to get people in the room. And as Dennis said, don't worry too much about how many people come. There's value in smaller groups. There's a value in there being 8 or 10 people around the table. You're still a facilitator. You're still facilitating the conversation. But if you're sitting around a small table and you got 10 people around that table, and you've met with everyone, and no one else knows each other, you have this amazing ability to kind of facilitate this conversation where say, hey, Fred, you talked about what you're doing and so, and I know when I talked to Tom over here, or I don't come up with good names. Maybe I should come up with better creative names. Rebecca, everybody likes Rebecca. So, what if Rebecca hasn't, has learned a lot about that. And then, so you kind of facilitate this conversation because you're the connective tissue between everybody in the room. So there's a lot of value even in small events. So Calvin, don't worry if it's small, just start somewhere, as Dennis said, and start convening people, and just keep asking questions. Continue just to persevere to find out what's the need, what's in the way of you moving forward. How can we help you? That was the one question, by the way. So many things I've forgotten. The single question I asked more than anything else was, how can I help you help couples? That was the simplest way to talk about all of this.
Yeah, thank you so much for those comments. I know that we are approaching the 1 o'clock mark, and so if you do need to hop off, that's fine. But I'm go ahead and let Bill. You had another comment.
Yes, getting back to Carl again, it would seem to me that one of the major tools we have in building a community marriage initiative is the tool of a roundtable. And Carl, I'm just wondering if whether you're coming from a big area or a small area, what would you consider to be, and the marketing is a big key and everything, what would you consider to be 2 or 3 top marketing ideas, no matter where you come from, a big area or a smaller area?
So from a marketing perspective, always focus on the need. Focus on the need that's been commonly expressed. And that persuasive copywriting document that I'll share with you all, Stephanie, I'll share that with you. It's a really powerful way to communicate in a way that people will respond. So from a marketing perspective, understanding the importance of copywriting and focusing on the need.
Thank
Right.
you, Carl.
I will definitely be sharing that with you all. And I think, Jenny, did you have a question?
I thought about asking a question, but then I reneged, and I thought about it again, and I reneged. So since you called me out, I'll just go ahead and ask the question. I'm brand new to all of this. I haven't had a roundtable yet. I'm very eager for it. I lead marriage ministry at my church, and I am so passionate about it. So I'm excited to make it happen. I'm kind of curious. I know, like, even in our area, sometimes when pastors are doing any event, but even marriage events, they really want to keep it to just their congregation, right? So I'm wondering, when people are working together at a round table, are they doing events and hoping that people from all different churches will come to this event? Are they kind of like sharing the load of marriage ministry, or are they really keeping it to their congregation?
Again, another great question. I know I've said that so many times, but these are such great questions. We honor the way that people want to roll with this. What I have found is that in something we've not talked about that underlies all of this is that through the entire process, you're building trust with people. And yes, we've had a number of pastors or ministry leaders not really want to, play well with others. And maybe they didn't want to, collaborate much, but when they saw the value of others doing that, it really brought the walls down, so to speak. Jenny, you bring up a really interesting perspective, because what we found is there's a lot of really small churches that they just don't have enough people to put on an event. And so what we encourage them to do is to join the larger churches in their events. So we have a particular church, First Baptist here in San Antonio. They've done a quarterly marriage event every 4 times a year. I think for 15 years. Amazing. They've been so consistent. Danny and Anna Panter lead that amazing couple. And I think generally they have 10 churches that come to their events,
wow.
just because these are smaller churches that just don't have the scale and the capacity to do it. And so we remind people of the value of that. And so, yeah, we break down the walls, and it's scary. It's scary to be in the same room with people that don't agree exactly with you on theology, and you figure out they're really fun people, and you can make it happen.
I love that. Sometimes I double down on verses in scripture that talk about being united as a body of Christ, right? Like to take down those walls of denomination and etc. So just to be one. God calls us to do that. So love it. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Jenny. Bruce and Lita again.
I just wanted to encourage Calvin again that don't give up on a pastor whenever they aren't ready to move forward, or they don't want to come to your roundtable, or they say they will and they don't. Just keep reaching out to them, because you never know when they might be ready, or something happens in their church. You know, we had one church, their deacon, a couple that had been there forever, were getting a divorce, and now that he realized that, wow, we need to do something. And so there's all kinds of things. Just don't give up.
Yeah, thank you so much for that encouragement, Bruce. I know that you and Lita have had such great success in that area with just that steady, slow developing of those relationships, and you've really seen the fruit of that. So thank you for that encouragement. Dennis.
Yeah, a comment about the idea of suggesting that a smaller church go to a larger church event or to any different church. There's the right way to sell that, and I'm going to say a lot of wrong ways to sell it. All right. So let me tell you, there's a huge concern in many churches, many communities, about a fear of sheep stealing. And if you just say, oh, well, just send the people to that other thing, a lot of times you'll see it in their eyes like, whoa, I don't want to encourage them to go, because what if they like that pastor better? Here's how you get around it. What you say is, the way you can have a marriage ministry is you organize it so that it's a trip that you're all going on together. So if the event starts, for example, at 7 o'clock at the other church, you guys meet at maybe 6 o'clock and have dinner, or you meet at 6:45 and go over together. Or if you're going to meet there, meet and you'll have a table together. So your table will be the way that your church is doing a marriage ministry. If you just have them show up and sit wherever, it's completely different dynamic, because then it feels like, oh, we're going to that other church's thing. But if you create it the way I just described it, then it's like, oh, this is the way that our church gets to do marriage ministry, and we get the benefits of our own little community, and yet we don't have all the overhead of having to put it on. You sell it like that, and then it's like, oh, okay, I got it. And now it's not nearly as scary. because you're organizing it for your church rather than just sending random people. So just want to compare and contrast that.
Thank you for that, Dennis. That's really great. All right, guys, we are going to go ahead and conclude today, but I just want to say on behalf of myself and Dennis and Carl, thank you guys so much for continuing to show up for this work. And we really so appreciate how much you care about what is going on in your community and the marriages and the families there. And we just thank you for leading in your community. And so just thank you. Thank you for being a part of the movement in this work. And I want to give you just a few quick announcements before we close. I want to let you know that the next CMI grant opportunity, if you're not yet a part of that, the deadline for that is September 15th. So be sure to keep that on your radar. You can see all the details for that at marriageinitiatives.org. And also the NARMI Summit is coming up July 8th through the 11th. It's in Denver, Colorado this year. And this is just always, for anyone who's been there, they can tell you it's an incredible opportunity to connect and learn and collaborate and just build relationships. You get to see a lot of the CMI family there in person. So it's just really great. And you can see the details about that at narmi.org. And then speaking of NARMI, next month's training event on June 19th at noon Central Time was going to be a special NARMI prep and networking event. So rather than the traditional format with a teacher speaker, we're going to spend intentional time connecting with one another, sharing ideas, and helping everybody prepare to make the most of the summit experience. So as always, guys, if you have any questions or if you just want to connect between these trainings, please feel free to reach out to me at steph@marriageinitiative.org. I really do love hearing from you guys, and keep an eye out next week. I will be sending out the follow-up email with the link to today's recording, plus all of the resources and Carl's slide deck and everything that was mentioned in the resources today. We love you guys. We're so grateful for all of you. Thank you for being a part of the CMI family. You guys we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much.